Want to give Bob Pollock a call and ask him your questions about lawns, gardens, plants, and such? You can do that. And the number, 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. He'll answer your question. He might even get it right. Good morning.
That would be encouraging, wouldn't it?
Had to throw that in there. We don't normally tackle major farming issues, but I'm just wondering, farmers able to get all their corn in yet?
No.
Gosh.
But I think they've been really working hard at it.
Yeah.
Trying to take advantage of the few days that were somewhat suitable for trying to do that. And get as much in as they can.
I've seen some corn that is up, though.
Because you can't keep going, especially with the major field corn, soybeans, those kind of crops. There's deadlines.
Yeah.
Because of how long it takes to grow the crop. And so then if it can't mature in the fall, then you lose the whole thing.
Yeah.
It has to dry down, it has to turn brown. And if you don't have a long enough growing season for that to happen, then you're not going to get anything. So it has to be able to grow, mature, and then be able to harvest that.
So there's a lot of corn still to be planted. There is corn up. I've not seen corn that's any more than 6-8 inches tall, but at least it's coming.
I've seen taller than that.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you're a farming guy.
But they were. Yeah, I guess I tend to. Maybe my eyes aren't always on the road. Is that because I'm looking over in the fields and see what's going on?
Well, you're all over too. You're all over. Speaking of which, is Indiana County much different or much behind or ahead of other counties in our neighborhood?
We're pretty similar.
Yeah,
pretty similar.
Okay.
There was, I think there was some rains that hit like over in Armstrong and Butler County and over that way that we missed. I mean, we got some rain, but we didn't get the 5 inches or 6 inches of rain that some people got dumped on a couple weeks ago. But
we had 10 to 15 minutes solid of hail yesterday at my place. It was so loud. You've got a tin roof patio roof like I do. You go out and I had to cover my ears. And still, what kind of damage does hail do to crops?
It'll shred them.
I didn't look over at the garden with the tomato plants and all that, but I'm sort of afraid to.
Yeah, you better go look. Hail can be very damaging. It can shred those plants, and then if it shreds enough of it and damages enough leaves, they're just not going to be any good.
Looks so good this year too.
Yeah, and that's the thing we deal with the weather. We have no control over that. There's been a lot more spotty activity, between heavy rains and downpours, hail, and that attacks any crop is susceptible to that.
Yeah.
And then you take fruit, so you get hailstones coming down and they ding the fruit. That's the end of that fruit.
Yeah.
Usually if they're big enough and cause enough damage, they'll bruise it, and then that'll start to decay, and then it just goes from there.
Apple trees right now, are they starting to bear fruit? Are we seeing apples yet?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, crop's looking pretty good.
Neighbor has some really nice apple trees. I just haven't been up to look at them.
Well, and they can hide. They're hard to see when they're small. They tend to blend into the leaves because they don't have any real color yet. They're kind of green, so you don't see them until you walk up to the tree, which is a good point because you need to look at that. We really didn't have any frost events during bloom to knock off any of those blooms. So as long as you had good pollination, you should have more than a bumper crop on a tree. Which means that you need to pay attention to that. You need to thin that crop out.
I was going to ask that next.
Yes. You don't want to leave all those fruit on there. And if you're leaving them for the wildlife or something, that's one thing. But from a tree health perspective, even that, you don't want to leave all those fruit on the tree because it can kick the tree into what they call alternate year bearing. Because they're trying to... Now, the tree will try to self-regulate itself. So we'll have what they call June drop.
Okay.
So that's where the tree says, wow, pollination went well. I'm
Too-
trying to raise
too many apples?
Yeah, too many apples, and so I'm going to abort some of those. And they'll drop, and you'll look at the ground one day, and oh my goodness, the whole crop's laying on the ground. Well, that's the tree trying to self-regulate and knock off some of those extra fruit. It usually doesn't knock off quite enough, so you have to take action yourself.
So trees are hoarders sometimes
Yeah.
when it comes.
Yeah, they're trying to perpetuate themselves and keep going. But too heavy of a crop will stress that tree.
Okay.
So it's trying to make all those fruit into something edible. Too many fruit will be smaller. They'll all be smaller than normal. And then about the time those fruit are trying to mature, that's also the time when we're setting up the flower buds for the following year.
Okay.
So if there's too many fruit on there, the trees are stressed, then they're not going to do a good job of setting flower buds for the following year. So that's when that can kick into the next spring. You had such a good crop this year, and then you go out next year and the tree hardly even blooms.
I don't know if you can, or how easy or how hard. It seems to me it would be really hard to define that over the radio. What is it a per inch, per bunch? How do you determine what's too many?
Yeah, so you kind of got to look at the tree. About 2 to 5% of the blossoms. So if you went out and counted all the blossoms on the tree, if you have 2 to 5% of those, you're in good shape. So if we try to translate that into inches, it might be about 1 fruit every 5 inches along a branch.
Okay.
1 fruit every 5 inches. Yeah, along a branch.
Because they bunch up.
Yes.
And you'll
Yeah,
have
so-
3 or 4 that
Right,
are
so
in
you
one
can-
little cluster. So
you can
pluck
easily-
off 3 of those.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's always better just to have 1 there than 3, because then they're touching against each other, and it's just better to have singles or sometimes doubles along the tree and space those out. Now, within that, like on an apple, within that bloom, there's what they call the king bloom, and that's in the center.
That's the dominant.
And then there'll be secondary flowers
The princess.
around that. Yes. So that king bloom, you're always trying to save that because that usually comes out first, gets pollinated first, will be the largest fruit of the cluster, and then thin out the smaller ones and keep that king bloom.
Keep the king, kill the princess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe leave 1 prince,
A
just
coup.
somebody to hang around with.
Has there been a coup?
Yeah, and you can't have too many kings too close together. So
Yeah, I understand.
Got to space those out.
Understand. All right, so that's interesting.
So
because
that takes a lot of effort to do that.
it's a big tree.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
can be.
and when you've got 7 or 8 of them in your yard, or if you have a whole orchard,
a lot of work.
Wow.
A lot of work.
Yeah. All right. Then, and
So
that's why those apple trees that you see in orchards are not so tall.
Yes, that's why. Yes, that's one of the reasons that we've gone to more dwarfing trees, is so that you can do a lot of these functions from the ground and not from a ladder. However, we're still using ladders and lifts and
Sure.
different kinds of equipment these days to do that job. And the whole architecture of how orchards are designed is changing dramatically. So much more of the production is going into trellis trees, fruiting walls, they call them. So we have a narrow tree that might only be 2 or 3 foot wide, but it might go 10 to 15 feet tall. And so you get these walls. And a lot of that then has come about because of mechanization, trying to reduce labor, because we know labor's a huge issue. So those ag engineers are looking at ways, how can we change the tree so that we can make a piece of equipment that will help make this job easier.
So that one
whether
person
it's pruning, thinning, harvesting,
Yeah.
all those maintenance activities.
One person might be able to do in the future what 5 did before.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Is it really good for the job market?
And do it
but
maybe even safer and easier, versus being up on a lift, being on a platform, versus being in a ladder
yeah.
is usually safer.
Yeah.
And they're making these platforms that are computer-driven, GPS-driven, so you drive it through the orchard rows one time, and it maps that, and so then you don't need a driver after that.
Oh, yeah.
You can
You just better work
turn
fast.
the computer on, and then it'll go down the row, and you
that
can
baby,
adjust.
That baby's moving whether you got the job
well,
done or
but
not.
you can adjust. You can adjust that speed. You know,
Yeah.
you can go slower, you can go faster, so you can still have a person adjusting that rate that you're traveling, but you don't have to have somebody just sitting on a tractor seat pulling some guys or folks that are, working on the trees.
There you go. Friday morning in the orchard with Mr. Bob Pollock.
So, go out, look at the trees, thin them out, and you just can hand thin them. You just go out and pluck those off. The sooner you do that, the better. You don't want to let the fruit get too big, because then there's energy going into that tree, into producing that fruit that you're going to just remove. So don't be afraid to do that.
All right. I'm not afraid to do that at all. Unfortunately, it's
You'll
not
get
my
nicer
tree.
fruit when
My
it's
neighbor
all
might
done.
not like it when I go up and start pruning his trees for him.
But you're trying to help them. You're trying to help them get a better, higher quality crop.
That's why I'm here. I'll explain that to him. I'll say, Bob Pollock told me to do it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
It